To say it's beautiful would be an understatement. To say it's heartwarming would be selling it short. To say it's influential wouldn't do it justice. My Neighbor Totoro is a critically acclaimed anime film by the renowned studio Ghibli, headed by award-winning director Hayao Miyazaki. The movie was released in Japan as a double feature on April 16, 1988, with another Ghibli release, Grave of the Fireflies, and these two couldn't be any more tonally opposite. Grave of the Fireflies has a heavy, dark plot about two children trying to survive on their own in the war-torn Japanese countryside. My Neighbor Totoro is a light-hearted film about two children moving with their father to a lush, green Japanese countryside in the 1950s. Again, couldn't be more opposite. The sisters, Satsuki and Mei Kusakabe, and their father, Tatsuo, relocate to a house closer to the hospital in which the girl's mother is staying, recuperating from being ill with tuberculosis. My Neighbor Totoro combines a story rooted in reality with scenes inspired by the imagination of a child. One of the first scenes is the sisters opening a door to their new house and seeing hundreds of little black sprites scurrying away from the light. An elderly neighbor says the sprites are Makuro Kurosuke and will go away if the family keeps smiling. But where does Totoro come into play? Young Mei, while playing outside, is led to a large camphor tree by two strange small creatures, one dropping acorns behind him. After falling down a path, Mei discovers a large, fuzzy, sleepy creature with a plump belly. When asked for his name, he yells, Totoro! Despite being in the title, the Totoros don't appear much in the movie, but every scene with them on screen is magical and memorable. Moments with the Totoros are more actions instead of words as they interact with the world around them, from growing trees to playing in the rain. The thing is, Totoros can only be seen by children, not adults. So you never see the creatures interact with the grown-ups in the film, but you still see the father believe the kids have seen them. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, as established with the film's premise. Later in the movie, the family receives a cryptic telegram from the hospital, asking for a phone call. Satsuki fears for the worst, believing something happened to her mother. Her father is at university teaching that day, so she is sent into a panic believing her mother is doing worse than before. Mei takes it upon herself to bring corn to help her mom feel better, but gets lost along the way. But with some help from Totoro, the girls find their way. Despite being called a classic now, it only did so-so at the Japanese box office on release. But as soon as Ghibli made merchandise with the clearly marketable title character, Totoro became hugely popular. So popular that he's now the mascot of the studio. To this day, Totoro merchandise sales alone are enormous. But that's Japan. The story behind My Neighbor Totoro in English is a unique adventure. How did this gentle giant do with audiences that spoke English? Today, we're going to look at the English dubs of My Neighbor Totoro, including cast members, success, and the impact this cuddly mascot had in the West. My Neighbor Totoro's characters first spoke English only a year after the film's debut. In 1989, Tokuma Shoten Publishing Company commissioned Streamline Pictures to make an English dub of the movie to be shown on Japan airline flights. But before we delve into details with the dub of My Neighbor Totoro, we first need to talk about the English dub of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, a film Miyazaki directed in 1984. To summarize, Nausicaa received an English dub produced by Manson International and Showman Inc. and released by New World Pictures in 1985. But it was less of a dub and more of an overhaul. To make the film more marketable to an average children's demographic, the folks behind this version changed character names and plot points, updated posters and other promotional material to feature characters that aren't even in the film, and cut 23 minutes and 36 seconds of material, nearly 1/5 of the movie. According to interviews, this was to cut out the, quote, slow-moving portions of the film. Additionally, the voice actors in the film were not given context of the plot, so everyone was just winging it. And the worst part? These alterations were done without Miyazaki's knowledge or consent. Needless to say, he was furious, and Ghibli requested everyone that had seen that version of the film to forget it existed. Now, what does this have to do with Totoro? Well, in 1989, when Streamline was dubbing the film, Studio Ghibli made it clear there were to be no edits, including removing footage and changing names. The only exception being Neko Bus being Cat Bus. And to go a step further, Miyazaki himself oversaw the dub script, approving and amending lines as he saw fit. The dub was adapted by Karl Masek, and while Miyazaki did approve of the dub script, there are some interesting aspects to look at. First of all, let's talk about Makuro Kurosuke. Makuro is pitch black, Kuro means black, and Ske is a common suffix in male given names. To get around this and make reference to them just being balls of soot, the Streamline dub refers to these critters as dust bunnies, something that's going to be understood by English speakers. But there are a surprising number of lines changed outright despite Miyazaki's supervision. It's still a coherent script, it's not like they went completely off the rails, but it's interesting to compare it with the Japanese version to see the differences throughout the film. And to note another trope of its era, there is added dialogue during silent moments, usually just dragging out existing dialogue to keep sound going during quiet moments. If I was to list every single dialogue change, be it added dialogue or changed lines, it would be nitpicky. It's nothing too out there. Examples of both traits mentioned would be at the start of the movie where Tatsuo asks where Kanta's parents are. In the Japanese version, Kanta points and says nothing, but in the dub, he tells Tatsuo where they are, out in the field. Or when the sisters go to the attic, Satsuki in Japanese quietly asks for the Makuro Kurosuke to come out, but in this dub, she tells Mei there's nothing to be afraid of. You know, changes like that. It might bother purists, but I'd say at least 90% of the script is accurate to the original version. Last thing of note is that Satsuki is given the Americanized pronunciation of Satsuki, again, a trait of the dub's era. The cast is led by the late Lisa Michelson as Satsuki. She's also provided voices in Robot Carnival, animated stories from the New Testament, and Fist of the North Star. Little sister Mei is voiced by Cheryl Chase. Her best known role wouldn't come until a couple years later, being Angelica Pickles in Rugrats. She was also Puar, or Squeaker, in the Harmony Gold dub of Dragon Ball, and various roles on Ren and Stimpy. Gregory Snegoff is both the voice of Tatsuo and the director of the dub. Gregory has also been Fritz in Titanic The Legend Goes On, Ray in Fist of the North Star the movie, and Graki in an American compilation film of Time Bokan. Gregory was also the husband of Lisa Michelson. And to round off the cast is Alexandra Kenworthy as Yasuko, the mother. She's also provided voices in Ringing Bell, Sazan Eyes, and Kashan Robot Hunter. The opening and ending theme are both dubbed into English, sung by actress Cassie Byram. Byram says being the soloist for both of the songs in this movie is still a highlight of her career. In an unexpected move, My Neighbor Totoro's dub went from the in-flight movie screen to the big screen. In 1991, the movie was shown at the Barbican Cinema in London during their Japanese festival. An interesting appearance, but not as interesting as where the mystical mascot went next. Fast forward a couple years to 1993. Despite Americans being responsible for the utter hack job of Warriors of the Wind, Tokuma was finally convinced to release My Neighbor Totoro to theaters in the United States. Tokuma felt there were better options for a distributor than Streamline, and decided to hire, get this, Troma Entertainment. Yeah, from the studio that brought you R-rated movies like The Toxic Avenger and Class of Nukem High, comes a licensed Japanese G-rated film. Granted, they distributed the films theatrically under their 50th Street Films banner, but still, it's funny to think about. In the early 90s, anime was not as widely accepted as it is today. You have a film here that is heavily Japanese, with Japanese names, Japanese landscapes, and Japanese culture all over it. This being said, the Americans had concerns about the film's theatrical release. The US editors wanted to remove two scenes, the family bath scene and the sisters bouncing around on the tatami mats. The concern was American audiences would not understand these moments. Remember earlier though, Ghibli had a heavy hand in overseeing this dub, so there was a very firm and clear no to any edits. Tying it to American concerns with this film, and despite having a clearly marketable character on the advertisements, the movie did not have American merchandise. More about that later though.
Hang on tight to My Neighbor Totoro. They're cuddly. They're huge. They're lovable. But to grown-ups,
you don't believe me.
they're invisible.
My Neighbor Totoro made its debut in US theaters on May 7th, 1993. There are no exact box office numbers, but apparently Totoro didn't do very well in American theaters. Critical reception was just as lukewarm as the film's box office performance. Reviews were mostly 3 stars with no outright scathing responses. My Neighbor Totoro was unlike any other kid film out there, for better or worse, leading to a huge split in reviews. It's funny to see these articles try to describe Totoro himself. The explanations range from a bunny bear to an outsized cross between a bunny rabbit and a fuzzy throw pillow to a bear crossed with an owl crossed with a seal. American critics were quick to contrast the easygoing speed of Totoro with the fast-paced, action-packed American kids entertainment flooding the market at the time, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Even if some found it dull, critics did praise the film for being a nice break from the norm, pointing out this is definitely for the under 10 crowd. Alright, let's address the most obvious sticking point with this film. It's clearly not American, and every reviewer knew it, and was okay with it. The review by Joseph Galmus from Newsday noted how Japanimation was considered too hyperactive for mainstream releases, but he compared that cliche with Totoro's relaxing atmosphere. Seriously, reading some of these reviews is so funny in hindsight. The review featured in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette remarked, "Nothing about the setting has been Americanized, and so the video offers a refreshing look at everyday life in another culture." And the Signal's Bad Barshi commented, "The things that can be learned about Japanese culture make it invaluable." One splitting point was, believe it or not, the animation. Some reviewers weren't impressed by the animation, which is a hot take. Going back to the Signal's Bad Barshi, he dismissed it as comparable to Speed Racer. Oh! Charles Solomon of the Los Angeles Times called the animation the weakest aspect of Totoro, commenting it never rises above the level of a Saturday morning kid vid. And Leonard Clatty of Variety says the animation has, quote, no more than adequate television technical craft. But on the other end of the spectrum, many critics loved how the film looked. Stephen Holden of the New York Times called the film visually very handsome. Betsy Sherman from the Boston Globe stated, the artwork is richly textured and flows smoothly. And J.D. Considine of the Baltimore Sun gave the movie's visuals high praise, referring to it as sparkling, good as Disney animation. I've said different strokes for different folks before, but man, this divisive aspect of Totoro takes it to a whole new level. And quite possibly the most fascinating aspect of these reviews is the positive messages people took from watching it. Food editor Sarah Fritzner of the Gannett News Service praised the positive imagery of vegetables, especially commenting on the scene of the girls helping Nanny in the garden. And returning to Bad Barshi one more time, he pointed out the behavior of these ideal children. Tell me, parents, would you rather your children aspire to be responsible children or mutant ninjas? That's what I thought. Take your kids to see this movie at all costs. None of the reviews really commented on the voice casts, except two. The Gannett News Service described the film as being seamlessly dubbed into English, but on the flip side, Newsday felt the dub soundtrack lacked the fluidity and grace of writer/director Hayao Miyazaki's animation. Hey, Post-Edit Yui here, it's been a while, but I did find possibly the best comment on the dub from the New York Times. In the English language version of this film, the actors speak in such uniformly cheery and soothing tones that they could turn even an incorrigible optimist like Mr. Rogers into a grouch. Like, what? Okay, anyway, back to the story. There was no Japanese language release, so nobody had anything to compare it to. In fact, one review informed viewers they'd be relieved as there were no subtitles. But if you want to see a notable critical review, look no further than the man whose name is synonymous with movie critique, Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert gave this film overwhelming praise. On the TV show Siskel and Ebert, he described it as a real treasure, lauding its gorgeous animation and the plot not being like typical kid fare with action and excitement. He also complimented the lead roles being girls instead of boys. Ebert gave it a thumbs up. Unfortunately, his co-host Gene Siskel didn't share the sentiment. While he echoed Ebert in saying it's a beautiful looking film, Siskel said it was boring. He went on to say he, quote, didn't think it was that special, countering Ebert's points about it starring two little girls with pointing out The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast also have female leads. Siskel gave it a thumbs down. Reportedly though, he was eventually won over after seeing it with children, upon Ebert's insistence. Despite the lackluster box office performance, My Neighbor Totoro saw a home video release on July 19th, 1994 by Fox Video, hence why this dub is colloquially referred to as the Fox dub, or even more rarely, the Troma dub. Neither dubbed the film, they only distributed it. Funny enough, the dub also came out on Laserdisc on August 3rd, 1994. Fox put a $1.5 million ad campaign behind this home video release. And remember earlier how I mentioned there were no merchandising rights with Totoro in the US other than the picture books? Fox added a mail-in offer with the VHS tapes for a plush of Totoro, and bam, it took off. The final sales numbers are unknown, but the VHS tape sold a minimum of 500,000 copies, and the Totoro toy offer was in short supply because it was so popular. My Neighbor Totoro quickly became a favorite sleeper hit amongst children for years and years to come, even being on Billboard's top charts of VHS tapes. This dub of Totoro had one more release, this being on DVD in 2002, and it wasn't very good. The only review I could find of this release was from IGN. The reviewer gave the film itself a 10 out of 10, but the DVD itself received a 3 out of 10. Everything that could be wrong with this transfer between formats was wrong. Colors were excessively saturated, visuals were plagued by combing and bad aliasing, the menus were lazily made. And while this point was not the fault of anyone on the dub team, the review found it surprising there was no Japanese audio track. All in all, a bad transfer. But this would be the last release of the film, or at least for this dub. And the writing was on the wall for a while. Want to find out more? Find out what happens next in part 2, coming out soon. Thank you so much for watching part 1 of the My Neighbor Totoro English dub history. Please leave a like, subscribe, and leave in the comments, what did you think of the Streamline dub of My Neighbor Totoro? When did you first watch this movie? What else should I cover in this series? I'm always listening to suggestions. Shout out to my supporters on Patreon and subscribers on Twitch on screen now. Patrons and Twitch subscribers get to see my videos the day before they're uploaded, so if you want to see my stuff early, gain access to my exclusive Discord server, and have your names on a video, please consider joining. Until next time, take care.